So not long ago, I think at PAX, it was actually teased that Sunshot would be getting a magazine buff at long last. This was a very requested thing from the community because Sunshot had a very small mag, 8 bullets as it is currently, compared to a lot of other hand cannons, and I believe it's going to be buffed to 12 shots. But my question is that really going to make Sunshot viable or people actually use it? And I don't really think it will. I do think a few of the year 1 exotics are kind of sitting in limbo in terms of their strength in comparison to the later year exotic weapons, and Sunshot's definitely a good representation of that. It's in a bit of an awkward place. If we look at Sunshot on paper and nothing else, it actually sounds like quite a good hand cannon. It's a 150 RPM hand cannon, which is a favorable archetype right now since it has quite good damage per shot and still a pretty fast rate of fire. It's got 74 range with the catalyst, which is quite high, 68 stability, which is also quite high, again for a 150 hand cannon, very high range, very high stability to go with that, 92 handling, which is great, 75 reload, which is definitely above average, and 60 aim assist. It also, because of its key exotic perks, has inherently explosive rounds to push out that range even further and provide more flinch and some explosions on kill. So it sounds really good, right? However, if you look at that and compare it to the hand cannons we have now that have come out later in the game, I think it's quite easy to tell that Sunshot's been very much power crept out of the game. Let's start by comparing Sunshot to Ace of Spades, another exotic hand cannon that came out in year 2. Now, Ace is a 140 RPM, so it's not as favorable of an archetype, but it's not that big of a deal because it's got 86 range. Yes, an insane amount of range. 86 range. 55 stability, which isn't crazy. It's not quite, I don't think, as good as Sunshot's, but still decent. And it has 55 handling, 48 reload. But here's the thing. It's got 86 range and 70 aim assist. Now, for those who don't know, the range and aim assist stat kind of go hand in hand. The aim assist stat is only as strong as the range stat. And a high aim assist stat, especially combined with a high range stat, is going to make the weapon feel more forgiving and, more importantly, more consistent. It's going to make it feel more forgiving for getting headshots, especially when you're firing faster or at farther distances, or maybe if you're just slightly off, you're still going to get those headshots. It makes a big deal in terms of how the weapon feels and how consistent it feels because it's more forgiving. Now, when I use Sunshot, a problem that I have with it, and I'm not sure if this is because of explosive rounds or the rate of fire or what it is, but there's something that feels inconsistent about the weapon. When I'm trying to fire near max rate of fire or at max rate of fire, it feels like there's shots or headshots that maybe don't connect, or it's a little inconsistent, and it could be because of its lower aim assist stat, although I'm not 100% sure. However, I do know it changes the feel of a weapon, the aim assist and range stat, especially on hand cannons, and kind of shows that in comparison to Sunshot, Ace's important stats have kind of power crept it out. And we haven't even gotten to the perks of Ace of Spades. So Ace does have a very high range and high aim assist, but not only that, it does have a essentially everlasting kill clip with Memento Mori, which is pretty nuts. It also gets high cals, so that flinch factor you're getting from Sunshot, sure, it might be a little bit better than Ace, but Ace still gets a little bit of that too. And on top of it, it does have Firefly, so it still causes explosions. It's not on every kill or maybe as strong, but it still causes an AoE effect on headshot kills and deals damage in, again, an area of effect radius. So we get many of the characteristics of Sunshot's perks, plus a very good kill clip, which is, again, in my opinion, showing that Sunshot's been power crept out. But now let's compare Sunshot to a legendary hand cannon. Spare Rations is a very popular 150 RPM hand cannon right now, the same archetype as Sunshot, and it gets some pretty powerful perk combinations. The main one being rangefinder and ricochet rounds in combination with some range increasing barrel perks and a range masterwork available. For those who don't know, ricochet rounds provides a 10% boost in range, and rangefinder increases your zoom, the actual zoom modifier of the weapon, but as a result increases your range by 10% as well, and these definitely stack. A max range spare rations could be 67 range with rangefinder and ricochet rounds, so it's gonna even outperform what would traditionally be a 67 range hand cannon, which is pretty crazy. For a quick comparison on what this means, I have a spare rations with full bore, ricochet rounds, and rangefinder, no range masterwork, so not max range, and its damage drop off starts at 35 meters. Even though Sunshot has an inherent explosive rounds, which actually retains your damage at range pretty well, it starts getting damage drop off at 31 meters, and it only actually comes close between the two at 50 meters, where Sunshot starts outclassing spare rations at about 53 to 55 meters. But if we want to be practical for a second, you're probably not going to be fighting with a hand cannon at 50 to 55 meters, which means spare rations pretty much beats Sunshot in almost all categories for range. Another important factor that we're going to get to here is that other 150 RPM hand cannons, spare rations included, and even Thorn, Lumina, Rose, etc., have very high aim assist values, and spare rations has the highest of all of them despite having so much range potential. It has 92 aim assist. And again, a pretty decent range stat to go with that, as well as range modifying perks, which is pretty crazy. It means this thing is gonna feel crazy consistent, incredibly forgiving, in a place where Sunshot is going to struggle to do the same. Sunshot feels like a pretty appropriately balanced exotic 150 RPM hand cannon. I don't think that there's really any other hand cannons, the 150 RPMs, that have a high rate of fire and have inherent explosive rounds or explosive rounds at all. I think that's still unique to Sunshot, so that's its exotic powerhouse trait about it. It's got a very good stat package, but because it gets a high range and stability stat, among other stats being pretty high as well, and a fast rate of fire with inherent explosive rounds, and of course the explosion bonus, the trade-off to these great things is a lower mag size, which is getting changed so that it'll no longer be a trade-off, and a lower than average aim assist value for the 150 RPM hand cannons. So as fantastic as the great stat package sounds, the range, stability, handling, explosive rounds, etc., all the great things about Sunshot, are they good enough to beat and warrant using over other hand cannons and what they have to offer? And I would say with spare rations being able to stack ricochet rounds as well as rangefinder, among other range perks, and I didn't even mention that the fact on legendary hand cannons like spare rations, you can put on an Icarus mod or whatever mod you might like, which is yet another thing that Sunshot doesn't get. Would you really say that the benefits of Sunshot really put it above other hand cannons as an exotic hand cannon? For me, I would say no. Again, Sunshot on paper looks great. It looks really, really good, but when you compare it to other hand cannons and what they can achieve, well, I just don't think it's as good. We also have to take into consideration that in Destiny 2 now, there is an abundance of damage buffing perks or lethality perks, like Kill Clip, like Rampage, like Swashbuckler, etc. And actually, Spare Rations is a weapon that has access to that. Sure, you're going to give up your rangefinder, but you still have ricochet rounds to emulate a similar effect. You're still getting at least a 10% boost, and you're getting something like Swashbuckler, Kill Clip, Rampage, etc., which is the best of both worlds. Even Ostringer gets 83 range, very close to the range stat of Ace of Spades, 75 aim assist, and still has lethality perks like Rampage. Or comparing Sunshot to Thorn, another exotic 150 RPM hand cannon, Thorn has 54 range, 60 stability, so decent range, decent stability, 85 aim assist, as well as its Soul Devourer perk, which again is another lethality bonus perk. And sure, it's cool that Sunshot gets explosive rounds inherently, but Thorn gets damage over time, and what does that mean? Well, it means that against a less than 6 resilience Guardian, you only have to hit 2 crit 1 body for a kill versus 3 critical shots, and when you have its lethality perk, you can 2-tap them as well. Even compared to Not Forgotten in its post-nerf state, it has 74 range, pretty much no recoil. That's the whole thing about Not Forgotten having the 180 RPM recoil model. 79 aim assist, so 74 range and 79 aim assist with nearly no recoil at all, and Magnificent Howl as a lethality perk that essentially allows you to hit only 2 crit and 1 body for a kill. So again, another hand cannon that kind of puts Sunshot out of a job. So I do still think Sunshot is unique. It's a 150 RPM with explosive rounds and makes explosions on every kill that potentially chain. And it's got a decent stat package too. But in comparison to other hand cannons that were released after year 1, I just don't think it's powerful or special enough to warrant using over those options. Especially since it's taking up your exotic slot. I think once upon a time Sunshot was a very strong yet appropriately balanced hand cannon, but in today's standards, it feels like a balanced hand cannon in a sea of overpowered hand cannons. So I'm sure you can already guess my opinion on this. Is a magazine buff enough to make Sunshot viable or a desirable option to use again in terms of PvP? No, I don't think it is. I think Sunshot needs just a little bit more, something a bit more to be a powerful option, to be a little bit more unique than other exotic hand cannons, exotic weapons, and even legendary hand cannons. I think maybe buffing the explosions again, making them bigger, making them do more damage, doubling down on that trait of it, could be something really cool. Or maybe introducing some sort of lethality perk on it, or a rampage style perk based on the explosions. I don't know. Maybe changing the explosive rounds on the weapon to work in a unique way specific to Sunshot that's more advantageous than normal explosive rounds. I'm not sure exactly, but I think it needs something more, and a magazine change or increase isn't just enough. So those are my thoughts on Sunshot. Feel free to leave your thoughts on Sunshot in the comments below and we can keep the discussion going. Remember, these are just my thoughts and opinions. You do not have to agree with them, but if you do have some thoughts that you want to share, again, put it in the comments below. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. I'll see you later. Take care.